We live in a fast-paced and hectic world where it's easy to feel overwhelmed, stressed, and out of control. How do you manage all the competing pressures without losing sense of yourself? How do you stay focused enough to not only plot a path, but follow it? Welcome to Recovery Road, a show that offers inspiration, insight, and intelligence, as well as success stories from many walks of life that can show you how you can control your own destiny. Our knowledgeable and entertaining host and her guests give practical advice that you can use every day in the quest to master your life. Now, here's your host, Leaha Mattinson.
Hi, everyone. I'm Leaha Mattinson, and welcome to today's episode. And first of all, thank you to each and every one of you from throughout this beautiful planet, wherever you are, for joining me today. You can either be listening to us on the podcast version, or if you want to check out the video version, make sure to come over to the masteryourlife.ca website so you can see me and my wonderful guest this week talking truth into the public ear. And again, thank you so much for sharing, liking all of the videos, and especially sharing to your family and friends who might be confused about what's going on at this time. The hope is that with today's guest, that we'll get some more clarity about what he has seen over the span of the last several years in terms of the revealing of data from the Jabberfest that's been going on. So without further ado, welcome to the show, Edward Dowd. How are you?
Excellent. Thanks for having me on today. I appreciate you and what you're doing.
Awesome. So Edward, just as a bio, I'm going to read it straight up, is currently a founding partner of Pinnacle Technologies, a global macro alternative investment firm. He also authored the new book, Cause Unknown, The Epidemic of Sudden Deaths in 2021 and 2022. The release date for that is scheduled for November 8th, 2022 through Skyhorse Publishing. Edwards worked on Wall Street most of his career, spanning both credit markets and equity markets. Some of the firms he worked for include HSBC, Donaldson, Lifkin, and sorry if I'm saying anything wrong, just clear me up. Thanks. And Independence Investments. Most notably, though, if those of you who have ever heard of him, he worked at Blackrock as a portfolio manager, where he managed a $14 billion growth equity portfolio for 10 years. After Blackrock, he founded Ocean Square Asset Management with two former Blackrock colleagues. The website or preferred place that you can find Edward and his work is theyliedpeopledied.com. Theyliedpeopledied.com. So make sure that you get out your pen and paper and write that down. And if you have any questions after this episode, make sure that you scroll a note to us at the website, so masteryourlife.ca, and we'll be sure to answer and get connected with you and get you connected with Edward's book. So Ed, I saw you on another interview, and I have to have you on to talk about this book and what got you interested and what actually got you interested in writing this book in the first place. I mean, you're busy doing, asset management, and you're a broker, you're doing all this stuff worldwide. And what got you interested in looking at the analytics of this particular blip?
Well, a couple things. But first, the book is being delayed due to supply chain issues because the economy is imploding. So the book is hopefully December 10th.
Great.
The ebook version might come out earlier, but yeah, it's going to be soon. So I gave you information that was dated because I just found this out. So it's real time correction.
Yes.
Look, I'm a guy that worked on Wall Street my whole career. Okay. And fraud is not something that I haven't seen many times before. Mm-hmm. Okay. And I've seen fraud in my early days at HSBC. There were all sorts of scandals involving the mortgage-backed securities, even before the financial crisis. Then I saw the dot-com fraud, and then I saw the great financial recession with real estate fraud that was banking fraud. So fraud. I've seen corporate fraud, so I know the telltale signs. When this vaccine was first introduced, I was like, no one's going to take this because it's experimental, hasn't been tested on humans, and it was rushed, Operation Warp Speed. So I literally thought, no one will take this. Then I was horrified by the propaganda campaign, and I knew something else, and the celebrities and everybody pushing this. And I suspected that this was a different kind of thing going on. And I was horrified when I saw that, but then I became even more horrified when the anecdotes started happening in March, April of 2021. I started hearing people, in my circle, not immediate circles, but tangential circles, whispers of some sort of problem after the vaccination, some sudden deaths. I know statistics, and statistically, if this was a safe and effective forget effective, safe. Let's just use safe. Mm-hmm. If this was safe, and other vaccines had safety data, I should never be hearing anecdotes like this, personally. That's statistically an impossibility. And so I knew something was wrong, and I knew this was garbage. Okay, I knew the vaccine was garbage. And so I said to myself, well, I don't have enough data. I just have anecdotes, and I'm a data guy. I analyze trends. So that was an early indication of a trend. And I said, well, I'll investigate eventually the insurance company results, because if I'm correct, claims should go up, and funeral home company results, because if I'm correct, they should see an increase in business. But what really got me into this fight was when they started mandating this thing in the summer of 2021. And that's when I said, this is crazy town. This is not the country I grew up in. And that's when I made a decision personally that worst case scenario, they're going to vaccinate everybody. I'll live in the jungles of Hana here on Maui, and I'll become like the savage and brave new world. So that was my downside. Okay. Right. So I was comfortable with that. So I started making a lot of noise on Twitter, started to get a following. Dr. Malone came to Maui in October, and I was able to meet him, and we wrote something called the Malone Doctrine, which is a way to take back the institutions that have been corrupted. My voice started getting bigger and bigger, and he elevated me initially to Steve Bannon. And that's when people saw me. I had a theory of the case, just a thesis, was a lot of tells, not the real hard data yet, waiting for insurance companies to start reporting. Because of my appearance on that show, I had a bunch of people came my way, whistleblowers, insiders, Wall Street people, and they assisted with the effort. So this has grown into a team effort. The data that I'm going to talk about today is done by PhD physicists, former insurance Wall Street sell side, number one ranked sell side analyst, myself, whistleblower actuaries. So this is just hard data. This is metadata. And the story it tells is this, bottom line. And the book, I did not seek the book. The book was pitched to me. Mm-hmm. So people saw that I had a different angle than a lot of the medical professionals, and that I was just analyzing big data. And so they thought that the theory of the case could be well represented by me explaining sudden deaths. So they came to me, pitched the book. And in the course of writing the book, new data has emerged. And here's the bottom line. The data clearly shows that in 2021 and 2022, it was detrimental to your health to be employed. Okay? What do I mean by that? What I mean is excess deaths and disabilities have primarily targeted those who have jobs. So here's one stat. Here's one stat, not my stat, from the Society of Actuaries. It came out in September. So this is recent data. Typically speaking, in any given year, the group life insurance policy population, this is a subset of the total U.S. population. They work at big corporations. They work in mid-sized companies. To get a group life policy, I don't know if you ever worked in one of these companies, but if you have, you join, you sign your healthcare form, and you sign your death benefit. And no one ever thinks of collecting because you're young, you're healthy, you're spry. Usually you sign it away to your spouse or your parents if you're not married yet, or a friend if you got a special friend. But this is usually 1 to 2 times your base salary, right? This group experienced excess mortality between the ages of 25 and 64 at 40%.
Listen to that. Like 40%?
40%. Just to give you an idea, 10% would be a 3 standard deviation, as one insurance executive described it, once in a 200-year flood. 40% is insane, insane, off the charts. So that's the number. 40% excess above baseline, what people between 25 and 64 experience. 40% for the year 2021. That's that group. The general U.S. population, which is much less healthier than this group. By the way, the insurance industry has done studies on this. This group typically experiences 30 to 40% the mortality rate of the general population in any given year. because they're working. And the only way you get a death benefit is if you're employed. If you're not employed, if you retire, you don't get a death benefit because you're out of the company. So that takes care of the old people, right? So it's usually people working with a job, employed. The overall population experienced 32% excess mortality. That's 8 points higher for this generally healthier population. Disability data shows the same thing. You're a different database. Okay, just think about this. So we have insurance companies. Then we have the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, which is not associated with Big Pharma. The overall population showed about a 7% increase in the disability rate starting around May of 2021. The absolute numbers are running between 29 and 30 million for the last 5 years prior to COVID. It's now 33 million. That's about a 3.5 million increase. When you break it down by population set, this gets super interesting. If you break it down by those who are employed, which is about 98 million. There's about 98 million working, 98 to 100 million working age Americans. Working with jobs. Mm-hmm. This population experienced an increase in their disability rate of 23% versus the general population of 7%. It gets even worse when you break it down by gender. Women experienced 32%, and men 19% increase in their. So women are getting hit more hard than men. Mm-hmm. And I think that has a lot to do with how it's affecting menstrual cycles. And, women have a different physiology than men. They have a cycle every month, and that if that's interrupted, it can present problems. So I think that's probably the cause. I'm not a doctor, but if I just had to spitball, that's it.
Right. Yes.
So there you have it. So we found the data kept growing over time. And in September, as I'm writing the book, this data from the Society of Actuaries came out, and also the U.S. disability data. So I had my PhD physicist analyze the U.S. disability data. That's what we found. And then the SOA, Society of Actuaries, those are their numbers. So these people aren't making the conclusions I am, but simple deductive reasoning. It's a smoking gun. It's a mic drop. It's over. So where are we now? We're in the period of the fact, and by the way, this is going on globally. This is happening in Europe. Okay. It's happening across all younger, healthy age Americans. And there was a mix shift from 2020 to 2021 and 22 of younger people dying faster than older people. That's called an adverse mix shift. So did the virus suddenly become only deadly to those who are young and employed at the same time? That's a very strange virus, isn't it? Mm-hmm. So what is the conclusion now? We don't need to know who or why. All we need to know is that the global governments see the same data we're seeing. We're now in cover-up mode, and that's criminal negligence right now. So we don't care if it was incompetence or done on purpose. That's stuff we'll find out later. But right now, a crime is happening. It's cover-up mode. So the cover-up was always bigger than the crime, unless the crime was intentional. If it's incompetence, they're committing crimes right now by continuing these programs and not alerting the general U.S. population and the globe, quite frankly.
Mm-hmm. And the globe. I was very disturbed to see that the CDC had just voted unanimously, I think, to push through this vaccine agenda on children. It's like, what are you doing?
I can explain that. I was fully 100% sure they would approve it. Mm-hmm. And why is that? Well, I've seen corporate fraud all over the place. And when people get caught, they don't admit to it. They continue as if everything's fine until somebody literally hauls them off or the company collapses because of bankruptcy. So they continue and they lie to their investors. So I've seen institutional investors who are very smart know that something is going on in a company. The evidence is coming out, but rather than trust their discernment and instinct, they call the CEO and the CFO because they have access because they're big holders of the stock. And the CFO and CEO lie to them. And they lie. And while they're lying, they're selling their own stock in the open market while these people hold. So the CDC, think about the CDC as a corporation. They're caught and they're like, ruh-roh, well, we just have to keep going. And now they're getting, with the CDC putting it on the childhood vaccination schedule, it's also a legal trick because it gives big pharma blanket immunity once this thing comes off of EUA. So they're hoping to stave off lawsuits by doing this while killing people, knowingly killing people, but they're criminals, they're caught, and now they're trying to basically pretend that nothing is wrong and hoping that no one notices. That's what criminals do. So it was no shock to me at all.
Right. So no matter where you are listening to this podcast in the world or watching it from wherever it is that is your home location, your stats or experience will be similar, is what you're saying.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So just because this is the American example doesn't mean that it doesn't apply to you, Canadians and people from the UK, et cetera, right? Yes.
While I was writing the book, my 2 PhD physicists looked at the Eurostat data with Denmark, and Denmark is a disaster. Literally, we break it out between 2020, 2021, and 2022, and the excess death rate is continuing to go up each year in the younger age cohort, which should not be happening with miracle vaccines and COVID essentially being over. Instead, it's going up. So what did the Danish government, while I was writing this, and about literally the week I was writing that chapter or that section of the book, the Danish government has basically banned all vaccines under age 50 because they see the same data we do. But they didn't admit to it. They had some Orwellian speak. They said, it's recommended that people under 50 get COVID rather than the vaccine. So that's an Orwellian way of saying COVID's safer than the vaccine. That's it.
Right. Show's over. Yes.
Show's over. But they're never going to cop to it. So what we have right now is one of the greatest scandals ever seen. And it's never been more important to understand that no one's coming to save us because every institution's been corrupted globally and regulatorily speaking. So the regulatory agencies are captured by moneyed interests, big pharma, other interests. So being uninformed has never been more deadly, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. And that's why this book is important. It's an attempt to change marginal minds, to convince people on the sidelines, and also hopefully it gets in the hands of a major policy decision maker who can make some impact.
Mm-hmm. And so for individuals who are listening to the podcast or watching it, the important thing would be to stop taking the boosters. Stop rolling up your sleeve to, do the next thing. I mean, it's still conversations that are happening at the family supper table as arguments about who's going to go get the vaccine or the jab. And, you'd think it'd be over by now. Like what I thought is people aren't going to take this thing. But they have. And so now we have to figure out how to actually bridge that gap too. Like, how do we actually, part of the problem, I think, is that, with people accepting the truth of the stats is that delivering that in a I didn't tell you so way is hard for people to do. Like, I told you so, blah, blah. That's not what this show is here to do. We're here to say, lots of people were snowed. Millions of people have been snowed worldwide, but now it's time to dig yourself out of the snowbank and to go, how do I actually, take back my health and wellness? First of all, by understanding that people within these systems are not your friends. And so, they're still getting paid, which is like, they're still getting paid. So all these people who are, able to live in Maui and to have some buffer zone around them or build a buffer zone around them, like you, Edward, like me, I made decisions early on too, but it's a hard slog going because the censorship has been so incredibly deft. So again, when you're listening to this podcast, please take the time to share it. Because the point really is for people to get that there's data to back all of the stories and anecdotes that you've been hearing for the last 2.5 years. There's data to support it. So you don't need to say to people anymore, well, I heard cousin Bob's, so-and-so had a heart attack and that's a little early, isn't it? And, people go, well, I don't really know. But really the data says it is early and that these things are linked to the inoculation. So, yes. Let
me back onto your comments. This is not to say I told you so. Mm-hmm. Let me give you personal examples. I'm divorced and the mother of my children decided to get herself vaccinated and the kids got their first doses. I talked to her about it. I was concerned, but this was in the summer of 2021, and I didn't have all the evidence I have now. The good news is mom's done. My kids are done, and they're not getting boosters. So the point, and my father took it, my brother took it, and we didn't have any big, separation between families and a lot of these fighting, in-house fighting. Right. We're kind of a libertarian family where, you make your own decision. But when the data started coming out and I started rising in notoriety and people could see what I was saying, people around me have stopped because I told you so. It's like, look, don't take the booster, because what we're finding out about the booster is every dose, this is dose dependent. So the more you take, the more at risk you are of dying and or being seriously disabled. So the first step is, if you believe us, which you should, don't take any more boosters. And you shouldn't take any more boosters primarily because it doesn't work. You still get COVID and it doesn't prevent transmission. So you're literally taking a product that doesn't work. Why put yourself at risk? That's just common sense. And hopefully, if you're listening and you're in doubt, that's the first step. So that I just want to piggyback on you. This isn't, I told you so. This is saving lives. And then going forward, protocols are already being developed to inject people or to reverse the effects of the spike protein. So help's coming our way. So just don't feel bad about making a decision. A lot of people made the decision because they were snowed and duped and they trusted. Now, I'm just genuinely a skeptical person. That's because I've seen too much fraud in my life.
That's great.
UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good. UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good.
And so when you were writing the book or coming up with the investigation piece of this, did you have pushback from anybody, or has it been all support?
Pushback's coming. Once it gets published, that's when they'll attack. The people assisting me are the two PhD physicists are literally data-driven guys. And if they found data to make my thesis bankrupt, they would have told me. But they said, Ed, it looks like they suspected that vaccines were causing it, but they're scientists. So they had to see the data. Well, the data tells us that. Everybody in my circles, my friends who were skeptical, are now, they can see with their own eyes what's going on. Anecdotally, the disability in my friend group is on the rise, even a year after vaccinations. People are coming down with heart murmurs. So there's things going. So word of mouth is spreading. So it's been nothing but support so far. I think once the book comes out and if I get any kind of media attention, the attackers will come. But I don't know what they're going to say because the book's written in a way to keep my opinions about who did it and why to just the facts and that there's a cover up. So we don't need to get in. I'm trying to keep this, the data is the data.
Right. So with the data, is there any chance that people who die of these things that are kind of new, that their insurance won't pay out?
I haven't heard anything like that. The insurance industry, we tried to alert them to what was going on privately. We held a call with 100 CEOs. Only 25 people showed up, none of which were CEOs. They sent some of their minions. It fell on, generally speaking, deaf ears because we did it in March, April, when people were still thinking everything was hunky-dory, although we knew it wasn't. And we have 5 people from those 25 that are working with us behind the scenes. So the insurance industry is, the good news is I know that they're starting to question it, but not openly in code. So you got to remember, all these people got jabbed and mandated. Right. So there's cognitive dissonance, but I'm here to tell you that things are moving. And the insurance industry is a very slow moving industry. Actuaries are interesting people. I'll tell a joke. I said this to one of my whistleblower actuaries, and she laughed because she gets it. She's heard it before. But can you do you want to know what the difference is between an extroverted actuary and an introverted actuary is?
Yes. What is it?
Okay, I will tell you. An extroverted actuary looks at your shoes when talking to you rather than their own. So the point I'm making is these people are not.
No, they're not whistleblowers. They took a look at the data and then they're not really able to communicate it externally to other people. So they they spend a long, hard slog moving up the corporate ladder, and they don't like to make waves. So that's what's going on. Right. So what does this mean then? Like the book is written about the data that came out in 2021, 2022, and you're updating the data as it comes out. Has there been speculation, or is there speculation about increases in that data set point? Like, will the 23 in the working population increase? So
here's the thing. So we had a spike into the fall mandates. We expected mathematically that would come down. The 40% excess death would come down because of the pull forward of people forced to do it. Mm-hmm. It's running between 10 and 20% globally right now. Here's the bad news. We expect it to accelerate into this flu season because immune systems are weakened. So we expect a rise. I'm also worried. We don't know I don't want to be too gloom and doom. We don't know what the long-term effects of these jabs are. We just don't. And we don't know if it's going to continue for years, or if you stop boosters, you're better off. We don't know, but we do think that coming into this fall, winter, we're going to see an uptick again, but hopefully that starts to come back down as the booster programs are not, the booster uptake is a disaster, apparently. It's even in Israel, which was on their 5th booster, apparently it's 2.5% uptake now. So even word of mouth is spreading, and people a lot of people who are not, pro-vax or anti-vax, but the middle, right. They're like, it doesn't work. I'm not getting, it's that. It's right. Yes. No, this is stupid.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It's common sense. That's right.
The problem I have is they're still mandated for all federal employees, first responders, college kids. And they're going to try with the vaccine schedule in certain states to get it on the school vaccination program. If they do that, that's criminal at this point. So the goal here is to expose this and get these vaccines removed forever.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Which is really commendable. And I can say in my own family, my son hasn't been able to go to trade school. We still can't travel out of Canada. We can't drive across the border.
Right.
We can't drive across the border unless you take the jab. And we're just like, how do we get to be so landlocked here? Like, what is it that we have done to create this situation, where we're not able to travel freely without following the mandates of somebody else? And
yeah, exactly. And, in America, we still have a modicum of the First Amendment. They're trying to take that away, but I feel bad for the Canadians because it's been draconian where you live. Mm-hmm. And I applaud you and your son and the courage it takes, because even though we had mandates here in Maui, pretty draconian, I was lucky in that I was self-employed. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I suspect I would have told my employer to go F himself, but, I didn't face that decision. But, a lot of people had to face the decision of, support their family or lose a job. And that is something that should never, ever happen again.
Right. Support your family. Yeah. And lose your job. So we've had, and that has not changed here yet, which again, to me, it's like, how did this go on? How's this gone on and on and on for 2.5 years? And people are under the snow job that it's going to be a quick, or that it will end. But we're coming into the fall and winter here. And to your point, there's going to be an uptick in flu deaths, which there is every season. If it pays attention to anything in the whole span of the history of the world, every spring and every fall, it's the same thing. There's a little bit of a cleanup that happens, and that's nature at work. So if we got so detached from nature that we don't actually recognize the natural, rhythms of life, and that's, that it becomes unnatural. the rhythms of life. And so, yeah, we're expecting this to end, but here it comes. So there's lots of talk of whether or not lockdowns are going to happen again. And so what do you think about that? Do you think lockdowns will happen again, or, that people just won't have the interest in it anymore, so they'll stand up?
I think the U.S. is going to be a problem because there are certain states that will not do it, like Florida will not do it. The red states will probably not do it. So then what are you going to have? Like half the country locked down, the other half not. Mm-hmm. So the U.S. still has a modicum of a republic going. I know in Canada, some of the provinces are doing different things, thank God. But I worry about, Trudeau. He's a little mouse tongue. And, I worry about Australia and New Zealand. They could try it again. And if they do, all Canadians need to unite around this because it's becoming ridiculous at this point. The thing doesn't work. Baseline. Mandating something that doesn't work.
Yes. And doesn't work on kids either.
No.
So the masking. No,
it yes. kills more kids than it saves. That's statistically proven at this point.
Right. So statistically proven. That's not anecdotal. And it happens in people's real families. When this started out, I had 4 grandchildren, and now I've got 2 more. So the 4 grandkids, my children decided to not do the Jabberwocky, but there was definitely, there's the pressure of all of that and trying to support family members. And we've been really lucky to have communities of people that kind of, sniffed it out early on, that went, no, we don't want your family to have to go through that. But as the pressure increased, and you're thinking, man, your kids might be the only ones who don't have vaccinated sperm or vaccinated wombs. Like, what's the right? It's like that, the talk about that, of just that people's fertility has been affected, women's menses has been affected. What are the kids who were conceived under this Jabberfest going to be suffering with? Like, has there been any data come out on that, or conversation at least, Edward?
No, so the fertility data, we're not analyzing yet because it's spotty and it's hard. It's deaths are easier than births, and births, it's easier and cleaner. So we're shying away from that for now because we don't want to get into a lane that we don't know what we're talking about. So, right. Intuitively, I've seen some countries with birth rates that have dropped. That's disturbing, needs to be investigated, obviously. Long-term effects, I don't know. I don't know if you ever saw the movie Children of Men. It's a dystopian movie about, birth rates plummeting. And then, of course, there's The Handmaid's Tale, same thing. We could be facing a situation like that where fertility drops for years to come. And those who aren't vaccinated will be at a premium, I think.
Right. Yes. Yes, which also might be scary. So switching back to your data, and what do you think were the most surprising metadata that you saw, like anecdotes that were related to the death and disability stuff? Because people were dying from what kind of diseases, and what were the disabilities that people are experiencing?
So in the disability data, they don't list the disability. It's huge metadata. But what I can say about the spike into the fall of 2021, a lot of people, Reuters and AP fact-checked me when I first came out in March with this data of just the fact that millennials experienced 84% increase of mortality into the fall of 2021, 84 excess mortality. And that's ages 25 through 44. That's just CDC data. The naysayers will say, well, Ed, it's due to lockdowns. It's due to drug overdoses. It's due to suicides. It's due to missed medical screenings because of lockdowns. Well, then how do they explain prior to August, September, October that it was running around 40% excess mortality, then doubled in a 3-month period to 84%? What was that spike? We call that a rate of change, a slope, an event. So it's hard to explain and tell me that there was a suicide pact amongst working age people in a 3-month period. It's hard to explain. People want to do overdose on fentanyl and heroin all within the 3-month time frame, and that coincidentally, all of those missed cancer screening treatments all resulted in death in a 3-month period. That's the temporal argument against these naysayers who come at me with that. And additionally, you have to understand, yes, are suicides running above normal? Yes. Are drug overdoses running above normal? Yes. But they're not above. They're not that much far above normal. Excess death, normal baseline deaths include a certain amount of suicides every year and a certain amount of drug overdoses. So it's the difference between what's normal and what's new. And when you back out those numbers, you can't explain all of it. It's just not everybody decided in the fall of 2021 to inject heroin into their arms or kill themselves. It's just, and when you drill down into the group life people, which is a subset of the millennials, you do not take fentanyl or heroin and keep your job. So again, remember, to collect, you have to be employed. So that group did not decide to overdose. That group also had jobs in a very difficult economy. They tend to be functioning. And, if you get depressed, usually you get fired eventually or managed out. Right. These people did not decide to commit suicide either. Okay. This group life insurance policy group. And they also didn't, I don't know about you. I've never had a screening for anything. So I've never had a screening. I'm still alive. So I don't even understand what that means.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good. UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good.
So if you have somebody in your family that's 25 to 44, that age, or family members that are that age and they've been working and they've been, kind of under this pressure in your world or in your life, it kind of would behoove you to pay attention to how they're feeling, maybe even asking how you feeling and helping them to figure out how to take back their health if they've had a slip in their health as well. Because there is disability in this. So there's death is one number, and then disability is a separate number. And also with data, people, I can see them going, well, there's a 40% or uptick in that. Well, what if only one person died, Leah? Then that would just mean that 40 people died in that whole population. Like, how many people really could have died? I think that's what people also say. Was it really that big a number? If it's not a number that's in their life, if they are past 55 and they don't have anyone in their life that's in that working age population, sometimes we've lost our humanity. And I just go, well, look around.
Let me put some numbers on it I have absolute numbers. So between March of 2021 and February of 2022, in the ages of 25 through 44 millennials in the U.S., so in a 1-year period, 61,000 millennials disappeared excessively, so above normal deaths that should have occurred. 61,000. Let's put some perspective around that. That's a Vietnam War. We lost 58,000 American soldiers in Vietnam over 12 years. This was 1 year. Now, like you said earlier, the most adverse event is death. Disability is 10 to 20 times greater than that number. So do the math. 610,000 to 1.2 million millennials have something wrong with them, and it's affected their ability to work.
That's absolutely horrific.
Now, now I talked about the disability data earlier, correct? Right now, the U.S. unemployment rate is running at 3%. That number is garbage because that they're using a denominator that's wrong. So once you get disabled, you're taken off the workforce and put into civilian labor pool. So you're not counted. So I did back of the envelope math. Again, this isn't rigorous, but I think between death and disability in the U.S., we're talking U.S., we lost 3 million working Americans in 21 and 22. The unemployment rate's 3%. If we lost 3 million out of 98 million people that work in the U.S., that's another 3%. So the unemployment rate is really 6. And, they keep talking about how there's so many help wanted signs, and they call it the Great Resignation because so many people are deciding not to work. That doesn't make any sense. In this economy with inflation, people need to work. The problem is that there just aren't enough workers. That's what's going on. That's why inflation is raging wage-wise. There's other reasons for inflation, but one of the wage push issues is they can't find workers. That's because quietly people are either dying is a small amount of it, but disability is a big part of it. So I calculated between death and disability, 3 million working Americans just kind of fell off, gone.
Yeah, and you say that is kind of not predictable, but across all nations.
Yeah, we're having inflation and supply chain issues all over the globe. And I have an anecdote. I like to do big data than anecdote.
Great.
Here's the anecdote. My car got into an accident on July 14th. I was at a stop sign. Someone hit me. I wasn't moving. The radiator was damaged. The fluid leaked out. Normally, it was the left headlight panel. So that's just think of an Audi A11 a panel and then fix the radiator. This is not a big deal, right? It took 10 days to get the police report because Maui Police Department has staff shortages. Normally, I would have had a police report in 2 days. So it took 10 days. Couldn't talk to my insurance company about it until I had a police report. Got done the police report. Then I tried to get an auto body shop. They told me, "Oh yeah, you can't tow it to us. We're taking." So this was end of July. We maybe can see it at the end of September, October. Then as I got into it a little more, I found out no one did Audis on the islands. I had to go to one place. They said, we'll take it in December. Then I got the estimate. I had to do an online photographic estimate. They gave me an $8,000 estimate for repairs. My insurance company said, we're just going to cut you a check and we're going to pick it up and tow it and take it away. So they cut me a check for 10. And then me being curious, I asked them, is this going on all over the country? She said, yeah, the backup's too big, so we're just junking cars close to replacement value if the expenses are too much. Because and think about it, if the claims get filled up to backlog, they need to hire more claims agents. So it's just better to cut the money and clear it out. And additionally, the insurance company gets my Audi, and there's a part shortage. I suspect they might sell my Audi for more than they paid me for the parts. Mm-hmm. So. And then the tow truck driver that came to get my Audi said, this is going on all over the island. And then he said, oh, my mom has a Jaguar. I found that funny. His mom had a Jaguar.
Right. Yes.
And her car got injured. It was a rear door panel. It didn't total the car, but it was enough damage that they needed to get the door panel replaced. The Jaguar dealer told her, good luck, 4-year wait.
Right.
So this is because of parts, labor. And is this what is going on? Mm-hmm. Well, I think this is a silent epidemic, and that's why my book's called Cause Unknown, the Epidemic of Sudden Deaths in 21 and 22. In the book, I do talk about disability as well.
Mm-hmm. And it is it's a key problem with disability because someone has to take care of those people.
Correct. So we lose worker hours from the person who has to take time off to care for that person. So you affect one worker, affects another worker. Mm-hmm. It multiplies. There's multiple effects.
And so does the data link at all or relate at all to the housing market, things that we're seeing there?
Well, housing is interesting.
The 60-some thousand deaths.
Yeah.
Is there a lot of vacancy?
Yeah. Well, so the housing is home prices are rolling over primarily because of interest rates, but I suspect over time there'll be less people and less demand. So it's a problem. Look, if I'm right, and I hope I'm wrong. If I'm right, this is going to affect global economies for years to come. It's going to have inflationary impacts. It's going to have goods and services impacts. Goods and services you and I used to take for granted are going to become increasingly harder and harder because there are not people to deliver or make the goods.
Well, making it is because it's all been taken off of our own soil to make things. So you've got we don't have hardly any manufacturing in Canada at all. So we were lots of friends that work in all the industries that people dislike. And, and in industries that people like, but to get a truck here in Canada, in Alberta, Canada, where it snows, and it's nice to have a 4x4 so you stay on the road. It's you can't get the truck that you want. You have to wait months and months and months to even get a truck. And it certainly isn't equipped the way that, we've been accustomed to getting vehicles, and that we need for making work and life easier here, transporting children, all those things. So people go, oh, you're spoiled. Well, it is actually when you live in a cold climate, and it is rigorous, hard work outside to shovel snow and work and all those things. You need to have equipment to do that stuff. And so that equipment isn't available. And gas price is also going through the roof too. So, we're landlocked here. And there's some, in terms of getting to our own resources to have access to fuel vehicles, et cetera. So it's a very...
Well, I have another knock-on effect, and I have an anecdotal story on Maui about that as well. When the part shortages occur, and you have you're a person who works and you need your car and you can't get a part, guess what's going to happen? Criminals are going to get involved and start stealing cars for parts and then selling them to people that need them at exorbitant prices. On Maui, there's been a raft of catalytic converters being stolen all over the island. There's some crew running around doing it. So this is going on. This is going to cause criminal enterprises to rise for things that used to be commodities that we took for granted. This is going to happen.
Yeah. And so lock your door. We've already seen that here too. Definitely people trying to do, preparing their buildings for winter time, and, having a generator out on a work site and, and tools, things locked up, and thieves coming along and taking the entire, everything they can load in a trailer. They're highly sophisticated. So Yes. It's not your regular people who are stealing an apple and a loaf of bread to feed their family. It's very, very,
it's organized. It's
yes.
It's not a guy smoking meth. It's a criminal enterprise.
Yes, indeed. And so actually that's interesting too, but a total side note, maybe, I don't know if you've heard or not, but Canada has actually, Trudeau has agreed to make fentanyl legal. Small doses of fentanyl legal. It's like in Canada and BC, they're allowing these small doses of illegal drugs now that you can actually have personal amounts.
You can't make this up.
No. And why are they doing this? People go, why are you doing that? Well, a lot of people must need painkillers at home. No, that's not the case. No,
they're trying to create addicts so they can create dependence and control you a little better.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And so we've got about 4 minutes left. What would be the things that would be the most catalyzing, I guess, for you, Edward, that you think people would need to know in order to take the blinders fully off?
Well, I'll take 2 minutes to describe that, then 2 minutes of hope and advice.
Wonderful.
Look, I am not into the red team or the blue team. I'm into team humanity. And what I mean by red team and blue team, the Canadians, is Republican, Democrat. Everything's so divisive these days. Mm-hmm. I know how greed and corruption work. This has occurred. This is about team humanity. This is about saving lives. And if you believe the two of us listening today, then, spread this information word of mouth, because that's the battle right now. It's not the corporate media is bought and paid for. The government regulators are bought and paid for, but we, the people, spread the message, and we wake up a marginal mind. Every time we do, our numbers grow, and eventually the politicians will have to listen, because this will become the issue of our lifetimes eventually, once enough people figure it out. So that's the first part. That's what I want to catalyze people, as a call to action. If you believe what we're saying. The second thing is, it's going to be grim the next 5 to 10 years in terms of global economic issues and what's just happened with the vaccine damage and the loss of trust in all institutions. Things are going to become more local. Globalization, I think, is dead. If you want to best prepare for the future, Get a new mindset. Don't get so tied up in your job and your material goods and possessions because they're going to become harder to come by. Form real human connections with like-minded individuals that have your back. I gave a speech to a bunch of rich people who seem to think that they're going to weather the storm. And I said, look, if things get really weird, and they might, all your paid employees are going to leave because they have no human connection to you. It's just money. Mm-hmm. You need to develop communities and networks locally that have your back. When my car got injured, I could have rented a car, but I had 2 cars offered to me for use as long as I wanted. So I took the BMW over the Escalade. So, yeah. So the point is, things are going to get better. We've been living in a 12-year zombie economy because of the central bank's decision and politicians' decision to grow global debt for the last 12 years. So the rich have been getting richer. The rest of us who do real things struggle. So you need to be confident that it's going to get better and a renaissance is coming. Don't live in fear. Fear causes the biggest problem for all of us.
Yes, get married, love your families, love your children. Edward Dowd, thank you so much for being such a wonderful guest and breaking down that data. I'd love to have you on again to talk about data as it evolves if you're available for that. Make sure you guys look out for Edward's book, Cause Unknown, The Epidemic of Sudden Deaths in 2021 and 2022. And make sure that you reach out to the masteryourlife.ca website so that you can watch the video version of this podcast, because it won't be playing on any platforms where we will get banned. All right. And please share it far and wide, because that's the only way that we can actually bust through this censorship that we have all been living under. Right? So love yourselves, love each other, mind your minds. That's all for us. Bye for now.
Thank you for being a part of our program today. Master Your Life is a presentation of Leaha Mattinson Enterprises, Inc. Join us next time on Master Your Life, helping you to discover the very best of you.